Al Jazeera is a toxic mouthpiece for terrorism. The manipulation, misdirection, and propagated thought control is a mere crucible of what the Qatar network is willing to do in order to make the agendas of terrorist groups completely pervasive.
To those who demand that Al Jazeera be shut down,
we too have demands.
We demand diversity of thought and opinion be cherished.
And that's just the beginning. Employees of Al Jazeera have taken firm pro-terrorist stances without abatement, without remorse, and with no apology.
الذين يعملون مع السلطة يجب أن نقاتلهم جميعا. عسكريين، مدنيين، علماء، جاهلين.
The indignant nature of Al Jazeera is ever persistent and bold, so much so that several financial quarter boycotts have risen up and called for Qatar to shut Al Jazeera down. Al Jazeera, however, is protected and insulated by many voices of hateful rhetoric and people in places of power. Qatar was quick to label anti-terrorist sentiments as detractors from investigative journalism. This, of course, is an immediate ducking of any legitimate responsibility. Al Jazeera even violated 2005 UN Security Council resolution, stating that networks like Al Jazeera must stop the proliferation of terrorist acts motivated by extremism.
Qatar has been blamed, criticized over the years for either funding or allowing sympathetic sheikhs, mullahs, sympathetic rich people to fund these movements.
There's differences between some countries of who are the terrorists and who are the maybe Islamist groups, but we don't consider them as terrorists.
Such as?
Such as groups in Syria, groups in Libya, groups in Egypt as well.
But isn't that a problem then? Because you then have a fundamental difference with some of your coalition partners, and you have been criticized.
Qatar must cut ties with terrorists.
You have just disparaged me as a member of Al Jazeera, but that's okay. Just give me a straight answer.
How did I disparage you? I said you're not being respectful. You're just talking over and over and over, and that's what you're doing.
Terrorist groups and their supporters fervently invest and leverage their mouthpieces, which means Al Jazeera will have a large, all-encompassing presence across the media landscape, allowing them to victimize the minds of the people of the Middle East. Even a cursory look at modern history tells a one-sided story. Osama bin Laden, Hamas leaders Khaled Mashal, Mohammed Deif, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, and more have all received immense presence and promotion, as well as the proliferation of their philosophies and ideals, backed by hateful, venomous rhetoric. Via Al Jazeera, furthering the recruitment and brainwashing of the people of the Middle East and those from around the world to challenge systems of peace and incite acts of terrorism.
The nation of Qatar has historically been a funder of terrorism.
This continues to happen with new voices of opposition today. The Qatar media has given intense presence and promotion to Minnesota Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar. Omar has come under immense scrutiny across the U.S. from both political fronts because of the nature of her radical ideas, including controversial statements like, "I'm going to unmask the system of oppression in the U.S." This has inspired Al Jazeera to rally around Omar in the same way that Al Jazeera and Qatar rallied around Osama bin Laden, who made the exact same claims and echoed Omar's sentiments that the U.S. is actively targeting Muslims. Omar's presence, protection, and promotion by Al Jazeera is confusing, especially to the left-leaning population, which doesn't understand why a conditionally progressive politician is having her voice and brand so carefully coddled by terrorist-promoting media outlets in Qatar. What's even darker is the correlation between Al Jazeera's rallying promotion of these voices and their historical broadcasting of anti-Semitic content, asking for the unleashing of jihad to free Jerusalem, which really boils down to end Jerusalem.
الله سلط عليهم طوال التاريخ من يؤدبهم نتيجة إفسادهم. آخر تأديب كان تأديب هتلر، يعني يوقفهم عند حدودهم، وكان هذا أدبا إلهيا، تأديبا إلهيا، عقابا قدريا لهؤلاء. والمرة القادمة إن شاء الله ستكون على أيدي المؤمنين.
But when the Arab states put them on the list, you said the charges were baseless.
No, that's not accurate. Let's put things into context. June 5th, 2017, four Arab countries decided to blockade Qatar.
No, we understand that. We understand.
Yeah,
I'm talking specifically about these 28 people and entities.
Yeah. So to put things into context again...
This sentiment runs hand in hand with Aljazeera's programming, which has recently shown anti-Semitism and the proliferation of anti-Semitism coming from Ilhan's statements. This foreign policy realignment crucible and hotbed in the United States is creating a magnetism for the Muslim Brotherhood. The Trump administration has moved to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terror organization, while many more voices are saying that it is time to remove the United States military presence from Qatar. Doha has become defiant, and the country uses the United States base as a crutch for protection and military involvement.
Concerned that Qatar has supported terrorist groups?
I've seen those reports, and if the reports are true, absolutely it's concerning.
One only needs to take a simple look at the ties between Aljazeera and historical terrorism to make a swift conclusion. Muslim Brotherhood leader Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi used Aljazeera as home base for his views thereafter.
جماعة رأت أنها في حاجة إلى من يفجر نفسه في الآخرين، ويعني يكون هذا أمرا مطلوبا، وتدبر الجماعة كيف يفعل هذا بأقل الخسائر الممكنة، وإذا استطاع أن ينجو بنفسه فليفعل.
The Arab Spring suicide bombings were endorsed by terrorist leaders on Al Jazeera. Al-Qaeda and ISIS speeches have been broadcast proclaimed as martyrs. Pro-Hamas meetings in Yemen have been glorified, including speeches and talking points from leaders whom the United States and United Nations designated as terrorists. The culmination of terrorist propaganda and terrorism promotion has led to a complete hijacking of Al Jazeera by the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, the Muslim Brotherhood has a credo that Al Jazeera journalists must pledge loyalty and meet certain qualifications, that they must adopt to a supreme guide of authorship in journalism, or leave. Indeed, in 2013, Al Jazeera saw many correspondents and journalists leave. Many, however, have made their voices even more fervent, which Al Jazeera supports, Qatar supports, and terrorists revel in. In context of these extremist views, many different former Al Jazeera journalists have been arrested on terrorist charges, including Mohammed Fahmy and Mohammed Fawzi, who were arrested in Egypt due to collaborations between Al Jazeera and the Muslim Brotherhood. During this time, Al Jazeera gave fugitive members of the Muslim Brotherhood access to resources, passports, and money for escape. It is clear, without a shred of doubt, that Al Jazeera is not just a mouthpiece for terrorism, but active, funding, and engaging resource for terrorist groups and terrorism. Al Jazeera is the largest news source and propagator of terrorist propaganda, if not a terrorist organization themselves.